On the Track is a web TV show about cryptozoology, natural history, green issues and whatever else the team feel like making up as they go along. Enjoy!
So what do we have in this episode, Mr. John?
Well, Hennis, it's another portmanteau episode with all sorts of odds and ends which have been sent me by various members of the CFZ team and the general readership. So, hold on to your seats, it's going to be a bumpy ride.
I really like the old credits.
And now, it's Gwen Dibley's Pearls of Wisdom.
With patience and saliva, the ant devours the elephant.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's John Downs, and this is Captain Phonobulax the Magnificent, otherwise known as Peanut, and welcome to another episode of On the Track. I, as you may or may not know, am the director of an organisation called the Centre for Fortean Zoology, and every Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock, and also every Wednesday evening at 6:30, we bring you a collection of stories about hard science, weird shit, and surreality. What's surreality?
I think that surreality is what happens when you have a talking cat explaining the mechanics of creepy crawling on a cryptozoological web TV show. So there.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, for the second week running, here's another portmanteau episode of Odds and Sods. And this week, most of the odds and sods were sent to us by our old friend John Pertwee. No, not this one, but that one. Well, first of all, we have a particularly revolting story which John sent in to us. And by the way, if you wonder what that weird noise is that sounds like heavy earth-moving machinery, it's Peanut. He's purring happily away. He's got the loudest purr of any cat I've ever known, and also the most magnificent eyebrows. So we have to put up with the slight sound problems caused by the continual purring, because he's a happy boy and he's decided he's sitting on my lap all the way through the recording of this episode. Yes, as I was saying, here is a particularly revolting story which John sent in. I wonder if you can guess what this is. It's a meatball. Yes, well, you probably guessed that. It's a giant meatball. Yes. But what sort of meat is it? It's laboratory-grown meat made from mammoth DNA. So it is a mammoth-sized meatball of mammoth. And it looks absolutely disgusting, and here's one of the reasons that I'm very glad to be a vegetarian. The meatball had been made of sheep's meat cells which had been injected with a single gene of mammoth myoglobin. Myoglobin is the gene which is responsible for the taste, the smell and the texture of meat. But why do it at all? What was the motivation behind such a bizarre and rather revolting experiment? After all, as the people responsible say, the proteins are over 4,000 years old. They are not safe to eat until lots of rigorous tests have been done on them. So basically, why do it in the first place? Well, it's simple. Money. It's always about money. No, what originally looked like a revolting, if mildly entertaining, and ultimately rather pointless experiment is actually part of a campaign to try to persuade the lawmakers of the European Union to grant licenses to the people who create artificial meat grown in the laboratory, so they can flog it to people like me who don't want to eat meat that comes from a dead animal anymore. Actually, I've got to the stage now I don't think I want to eat meat even if it is in the laboratory, because I think the whole thing smells and tastes rather nasty. Although I have to admit that, disgusting that it looks, if I ever get a chance to eat a bit of meatball from a 4,000-year-old mammoth, of course I'm going to. So, what happens next? Well, there's all sorts of claims from various laboratories around the world that they are within spitting distance of being able to resurrect a mammoth itself by injecting bits of the mammoth genome into the egg cells taken from a female, well, it wouldn't be from a male, would it? From a female Asian elephant. And again, why? What's the point? You've guessed it! Money. Although they deny it, the whole point will be to have some sort of a real Jurassic Park of extinct animals paraded before modern man for modern man's entertainment and delectation. Well, I find that there's something really quite unpleasant about this. But we're just going to have to wait and see how it pans out.
And of course, everybody knows that this is just the sort of insane nonsense that the EU encourages. And everybody knows that if you eat mammoth flesh, you become a mammoth yourself. And so Brexit happened just in time to stop us all being crushed to death by giant prehistoric elephants.
That's enough of him, like. What's the next story?
Well, now, Archie, we have another noisome object from prehistory. Look at this. Can you guess what this one is? It's a 30,000-year-old frozen prehistoric squirrel that died while it was asleep after having just had a large meal. Well, I can think of much worse ways to go. In fact, I think possibly that Richard Freeman and I, at least amongst the CFZ, would have this really as our chosen way to depart this planet. So, well done, squirrel, I say. And look, here we have a X-ray of the squirrel, so you can actually see how it was diagnosed that this rather noisome lump of frozen fur actually contained the mortal remains of a small member of the Sciuridae. What species we don't know yet, but if I ever find out, I'm going to let you know. And Peanut wants you to know that he found a dead squirrel once and he wasn't at all impressed with it. Archie wasn't listening, because otherwise he'd have probably wanted to rush out into the garden and investigate it for himself.
I found a dead shrew once and I ate it and I was sick.
And on that note, let's go over to Florida to see what Katie and Eric and V, by remote control, have been doing.
Deep in the Florida Everglades, lurks the hairy beast of yore.
And now we have a story which was sent to us by Miss Daisy all the way over in Germany. And it appears that for once the British government have done something right, and they are launching a whole range of new grants to safeguard rare creatures in Britain. Cop a load of this. I'm not known for either trusting or accepting the word of governments, but unless they are doing something really underhand, this seems to be on the level, and this seems to be a jolly good idea, with a whole list of threatened creatures and plants being slated for these conservation grants. For example, the press release says species such as lady's slipper orchid, water vole, natterjack toad, waterbiter cricket and curlew could benefit from a grant from the £18 million Species Recovery Programme Capital Grant Scheme. The scheme will support projects over 2 years, delivering targeted conservation action through the creation and improvement of specific wildlife habitats, conservation translocations, whether native at-risk species are moved or released here from one geographic area to another to boost populations, as well as supporting research and creating solutions to address species decline. Tony Juniper, the chair of Natural England, said, England's wildlife is subject to a range of pressures, with many species seeing drastic decline. The fragmentation of habitats, historic losses of natural areas, pollution, the changing climate and the impact of invasive alien species have all played their part, to the point today where nearly 40% of England's wildlife species are in decline and about 15% are in danger of becoming extinct here. We know that we can turn this around, though. The return of large blue butterflies to flower-rich grasslands in the Cotswolds, red kites coming back to soar over the Chiltern Hills and beyond, the bittern making a comeback back in East Anglian wetlands, and the white-tailed sea eagle to the south coast, all present practical cases in point as to what can be done with careful planning and partnership working. The funding announced today will continue to build and support the excellent collaborative work that is happening as we put nature on the road to recovery. Well, I hope it's true. Believe me, how I hope it's true. But, like I said earlier, I do not have much faith in politicians. Manifesto promises usually only last until the end of the electoral process and are then quietly forgotten. But if English nature and Dr. Juniper are to be believed, and I think they probably are, this is a really remarkable new project. However, I am a little worried because 18 million quid, although it's a hell of a lot to people like you and me, it isn't very much as far as the grand scheme of things are concerned, and I wonder how many projects can actually be funded with 18 million quid. But just like all the other stories in this episode, you're just going to have to wait and see. And now we go over to Alaska, or rather more accurately, we go over to Shoebury Ness in Essex, where Miss Maxine has been following events that have been happening in Alaska with an unseasonably large bird. The Mendenhall Valley is the drainage area of the Mendenhall River in the US state of Alaska. The valley contains a series of neighborhoods comprising the largest popular place within the corporate limits of the city and borough of Juneau, which is Alaska's capital. The Mendenhall Valley was formed by a glacier over the course of roughly 3,000 years. It is named for the American physicist and meteorologist Thomas Corwin Mendenhall. The Mendenhall Valley begins at 10 miles from the downtown area at the intersection of Egan Drive and Glacier Highway, and ends 10 miles further west at the intersection of Glacier Highway and Mendenhall Loop Road. And it is Mendenhall Loop Road that is the location for this particular story. There have been reports of giant birds in Alaska for many years, but recently they've started up again. According to several eyewitness reports, a bird with a wingspan nearly the width of Mendenhall Loop Road has been spotted in the Mendenhall Valley. The original post from eyewitness Tabitha Bauer went, "I was just driving by the movie theatre in the valley and there was a huge black bird flying above the road. The wingspan has to be at least 20 feet. It was almost as wide as the road. I've lived here all my life and I've never seen anything like it. It freaked me out. It was not a raven or an eagle. This isn't a joke. The thing was huge, almost the size of a small aeroplane. Did anyone else see it?" The sighting was backed up by several others and a long comment thread on the post. Some were poking fun at the idea of a thunderbird or pterodactyl in the valley, but others weren't so sceptical. Bauer, recounting the story to the Juneau Empire a few days after spotting the bird, said it was like an eagle but 5 times as big. She couldn't think of any other way to describe the odd encounter. These accounts of unfeasibly large birds turn up sporadically quite a lot of different places in the United States. 19 years ago, back in 2004, I was in Illinois visiting my friend Jessica Dardine, and she was driving me down from her home in Marshall, Illinois, down to the southern part of the state, and we were looking out for stories of giant black cats, which it was being claimed were black panthers or black pumas, but there ain't no such thing as a black puma. In fact, at that time in Illinois there were no pumas at all, at least not supposed to be any pumas at all, but that's a totally different story. We were driving down the main highway all the way down to southern Illinois, where I saw an enormous bird swooping across the road in front of us. It was at least half as big again as the largest turkey vulture that I've ever seen, and I'm not sure how big turkey vultures can get, but they can get pretty sizable, and I saw some very large ones during our time in Illinois. Turkey vultures are large birds. They have a wingspan of 160 to 183 centimetres, that's 63 to 72 inches, a length of 62 to 81 centimetres, that's 24 to 32 inches, and a weight of between 0.8 to 2.41 kilos, that's 1.8 to 5.3 pounds. Birds in the northern limit of the species range average larger in size than the vulture of the neotropics, but this was half as big again as any of them. And I asked Jessica, did she see it? She only saw something out the corner of her eye, and she was too busy driving, and she didn't seem to think there was anything special about it. But it totally did my head in, and it's one of those things that has always stayed with me and that I would like to find out more about. Apart from its size, in every other respect it resembled a turkey vulture, and I am forced to conclude that it was a bloody enormous turkey vulture. Now, are enormous turkey vultures responsible for the sightings of birds like the ones reported from Alaska and the one which carried away Marlon Lowe in Illinois in 1977? Because there are stories of these birds from right across the United States, and the easiest answer to them, the easiest explanation would be that there is somehow a gene of gigantism which somewhere along the line comes into play and makes occasional specimens of turkey vultures far larger than they're supposed to be. That's exciting enough of a possibility, but could they be a new species? I think, just as I've said with every other story in this portmanteau episode, you're just going to have to watch this space.
If you want to support us and help us make more content like these, please press like, subscribe, follow our Facebook page and check out our Patreon.
And as the ghost of Joe Strummer, who's an ever more regular visitor to my little studio, wants me to remind you, always press the notification bell, or else you won't be told when the next show's going to be.
And that would be an awful pity, wouldn't it?
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is about it for this episode. Once again, I apologise for the noise pollution coming from the os hyoid of this magnificent creature, who has once again decided he wants to sit on Daddy's lap and purr loudly. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to say a big thank you to everybody but for whom blah blah blah. First of all, my producer Louis, and my old friend, Deputy Director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology, and my carer who pushes me around hospitals in my wheelchair while we vainly hope for a recovery which is going to make me skip around the road, skip around the corridors like a mountain goat and make Hennis into a spring chicken. But so far it hasn't happened, so Graham still has to push me around in the chair. Thank you, mate. I really do appreciate it. I wouldn't be able to do it without you. Now I want to say thank you to my guests this time, who are Richard Freeman and a load of people who provided me with rabbit holes for which I have every propensity for diving down. And so that's a big thank you to John Pertwee and to Miss Maxine, that's Maxine Pearson, and to Miss Daisy, that's Daisy Swan. God bless all of you. Thank you very much for giving me these stories. Please guys, find me on Facebook and send me stories. I like it when I have stories like this that I can just follow up on. So please send them to me. Also, if you're not in the habit of doing it, if you are free on a Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock, sign in to YouTube and come and join in the live chat. There's usually 8 or 10 of us chatting live as the show goes out, and I'm hoping to get more and more people doing it, because the more people we have in the live chat, same as the more people we have commenting, and the more people we have pressing bing, the like button, and there's a bell which tells you when there's future shows. The more people who do that, and the more people who subscribe, the more popular the show is, and the more impressed the mighty YouTube algorithm is. I'm still not really sure what an algorithm is, but I don't care. But if you guys would like to do that, it'll make me and Peanut very, very happy. And I'm sure even if you don't care about making a silly old hippie like me happy, you'd be very happy to. You'd be very impressed at the idea of being able to make a small orange cat with enormous eyebrows and the loudest purr I've ever heard. Very happy indeed. So, I'm going to be back on Saturday. I'll be back on Wednesday. And what we got on Wednesday? Well, we have book reviews and another visit from Cara and Ralph the Monster. But Saturday, what is next Saturday's show going to be? I don't know. Because when I'm recording this, it's Easter Saturday. No, it isn't. It's Easter Monday. I'm talking nonsense again. And I'm not sure what date this is coming out. But I do know that at the beginning of May is the coronation of good King Charles. And I am not going to be putting out a proper show for that. But what we are going to do, we're going to put together a collection of things from various episodes of On the Track Extra that people haven't seen as much as they have the main shows. And Hennis somewhere read about Coronation Chicken, so he's decided he is the Coronation Chicken and he's going to be presenting it. So, we've got a lot to look forward to. Now, are you there, Mr. McCrinnan? Because it only goes for me to say now that if you're there, come on, McCrinnan, get ready. I'll be seeing you.